It's like,
All right.
Hello, everybody.
Good
Hello.
day.
It looks like we've got a couple of switched names, but we're close. We're close.
Oh, that was awesome.
oh my God.
There we go.
This is like a Rubik's Cube.
That was awesome.
I was actually cool with being Laurie.
I was cool with being you, so I'm good with that.
Let's go. Let me just give you my hat. Oh no, this way.
No, I want the scarf.
Oh yeah, you do? I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to thank y'all so much for being here. I think that when we think about Global Diversity CFP Day, this is probably where people's minds go first. Like, how do I get started? How do I submit to a conference? What is that process like? And so I would love it if we could start off with each of you kind of giving a little bit of an intro. And then I have some questions. I'm going to be grabbing some questions from the chat, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Ariba, would you mind starting us off?
Sure. Could you say the question again? I had the video live streaming at the same time, so, and I had all the audios in my head. So I had to pause that. I was like, why am I hearing Aisha like 2 to 3 times?
It's all good. Yeah, we're going to start off with each person introducing themselves, and then we'll go from there. We'll jump into the questions. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ariba Jahan. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the Director of Innovation at the Ad Council by day, and then I am really all about these types of communities after work. So Global CFP Day is one of the best communities. I had the honor to join as an attendee once, and then helping in these ways after. So really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Ben, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Ben Hong, pronouns he, him. Like Ariba, by day, I'm a senior developer experience engineer at Netlify, and by night, I roam the Vue community as a Vue core team member and do a lot of community organizing as well, and really happy to be a part of this event.
Thank you. And Henri?
Bonjour. Hello, everyone. My name is Henri. Last name is Helvetica, but that's a non plume. He, him. I'm a freelance developer in the greatest city on the planet, Toronto, Canada, by the way. But I am a avid community organizer. I can get into that a little later. I'm a big believer in this process of sort of presenting yourself. So these things are very sort of dear to me, essentially. So delighted to be sharing and speaking about this today.
Wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Laurie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie Barth. I'm a staff software engineer at Gatsby. And in sort of the rest of my time, I just educate the world is the best way of describing it. I do kind of blog posts, and I'm an egghead instructor and conference talks and that sort of thing. And then, as you can tell, I am a big fan of Lego because it is taking up the wall behind me. So if you have any Lego questions, always up for that too.
And just recently, you've been doing some really fun educational Lego themed videos. So look out for those as well.
Yeah, TikTok Lego data structures, basically.
I love it.
Love it.
I love it.
Oh man, I got to check that out.
It's so cool. So I think the first question, so I've got a list, and these are things that I think folks are interested to know. They're things that I think about, but I'm also interested to take some questions from the chat. So we're gonna start there, and I'm gonna work other folks' questions in as well. My first one is, if you've ever been a conference organizer or served on a selection committee, how did that selection work? And what are some of the things that you look for during that process? And anyone feel free to jump in.
Okay, I'm going to start. There was some dead air there. I was actually lucky enough to be on a selection committee with O'Reilly when they had the Velocity conference. And the first thing I kind of, I read a CFP a few times. And there's certain things I look for, essentially sort of like kind of like an intro discussion of the challenge and what they plan on presenting as a solution. And I know, organizations may have different, or actually people in general may have different sort of procedures and how they select. But I definitely do want to see a bit of a story being told as well. You'll also find that I'm sure everyone here has been a sort of a victim of this, sort of, rushing in a CFP. So, if you're light on details, there's a very good chance you're probably not going to get selected. That's just my personal opinion. If your CFP is going to be like 3 lines, it's like, I just want to discuss this and how important it is, and you kind of leave it there. I just feel like you're not particularly telling the story that I think could be told. So, these are one of the things, some of the things I look for, in sort of short terms.
Yeah, one of the things I look for is a match with the conference. So depending on what the event is, depends on, whether or not what you submitted makes sense. If you're at a community event, for example, that's in a specific geographic location and it's trying to appeal to all the developers in that area, and you are going for a hyper niche topic, then that might not be a great fit because there's only, 5 slots for talks about JavaScript and you want to appeal to as many people as possible. That being said, if your super niche topic is like how to write Super Mario Brothers in JavaScript, like that's just cool for everybody. So it doesn't matter. But one of the things that I really like to see from people, sort of the same thing as Henri said, 3 lines is probably not enough. I want to see some sort of description of what you're saying, but something that is dynamic and energetic in the way that it's written. So something that makes it sound like if someone else were reading it, because we tend to use those CFP submissions like on the website, this is what this talk is going to be about. I want to read something that if I were a conference attendee, I'm like, oh, that's the talk I'm going to go to. So if it's sort of just dry on the page and you're saying, I want to talk about CSS Grid because CSS Grid is important, that's great. And I agree with you, but make it a little more engaging. Give people a reason to want to come to this event, because especially for events that aren't single tracked, they have a lot of options to choose from.
Yeah,
Great
and to tack on what Laurie was saying, I think especially with the multi-conference events, I've seen sometimes people try to get really punny with their titles because you're really knowledgeable about it and you try to, and so that's really great for everyone who understands the joke. But then a lot of times for the people who might not be familiar with the topic, it actually ends up kind of alienating the audience. So I actually do like it when the titles of the talks, a little bit of like funniness is good, but then like still like in a clear declarative way, so that even if they don't read your CFP, they can kind of identify if this is for them or not. And so just being careful of that can go a long way when it comes to appealing to your broader audience.
Yeah, that's a huge point for me. I'm just going to jump in here.
Please.
I feel like if you're when I'm reviewing submissions, I'm reviewing a lot of submissions, and if I can't understand what your talk is about pretty quickly, then it's going to be difficult for me to recommend that we give this talk. Because I want to get through the other several hundred talks that I need to review, but also as an attendee, I'm going to look at a list, and if we're talking about me, I'm going to be making some very last minute decisions about what I'm going to go see. And I want people to be able to make that choice as easily as possible. And so if it's not clear from your title and your abstract what you're talking about, then I'm going to ask you to come back with something clearer if I'm able to give feedback at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone said like really key things. I haven't been a conference organizer, but I have been, I run a local community, so Women in Innovation. I run the chapter. And I think when we think about speakers to bring in or workshop facilitators to bring in, we think about what is happening right now and where do we need a real discussion to be happening. So if there's a speaker who has a certain skill set or knowledge, but is really thinking about like pushing the envelope in the discussions that are not being had, that's something we also pay attention to. So I know during 2020, some of the key areas we prioritized for our community was people talking about resilience, people talking about boundary setting, as well as like how to get ahead in your career. Or so like holding space for both is really important. So we were thinking about like what are the types of things that can level up our community, but also like take care of them. So I think in terms of topics, we try to keep an eye on both.
That makes a lot of sense. So, sort of turning it around, as a speaker, how do you find events to speak at?
Word of mouth. So the first two events were, local to my area, or I had seen them on Sessionize or Paper Call or something like that. But after a certain point, you start meeting fellow speakers and you say, what are the events that I should really prioritize? What are the great community events where you really feel like you get to interact with people and you're having an impact and, people are engaged and that sort of thing. And then, admittedly, sometimes it's what's a really cool place to travel for a conference. Like, I'm not even going to lie about that. That's
a little different now.
Right now, right? But sometimes it's that too. And I will say, everyone talks about sort of speakers having like a breakout year where you go to a certain number of events and then you meet other organizers and other speakers and they recommend you go to other events, and then it's sort of rolling downhill, as it were. And then you have to start getting really picky and you have to start being really intentional about where you're going and not burning out and not accepting too many things, because it's really easy to look 4 months in advance and say, oh yeah, I can agree to that. And that 2 days later, and that 5 days after that, and that 10 days after that, and it's all going to be great. And then you get there and you are miserable. I was miserable for 5 days in Germany doing a keynote because I was exhausted. So you really have to listen to yourself as well and sort of make the choices that are right for you as a human being.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm a big fan of, and this is something I'll never stop talking about when people want to get into speaking, is the meetup circuit. I just think it's egregiously overlooked. I realize that people want to be under the bright lights and headlining, next to Beyonce, and I totally understand that part. But if you want to get comfortable with the entire process, I think there is absolutely nothing better than starting at the meetup level. Meetup organizers are constantly looking for speakers. I think most of them will be happy to help you out if you're a first timer. And I'm also a big believer that you can start at a meetup level with a lightning talk, 5-10 minutes. It'll teach you how to organize your thoughts, organize, your sort of writing of a talk, and then you can sort of progress thereafter. So I just think the meetup, and especially right now where there's absolutely no travel involved, I think there's been no better time than to get into speaking this way through the meetup channels.
That's such a great point. I was thinking about like back in the day, just like 2 years ago, when I first was like, I want to speak at a thing. I don't even know what that thing is. I didn't really know what word of mouth would even be. I didn't really know what networks to tap into, or like how to even find organizers, or even how to approach them. I think for me, it was attending things like this, Global Diversity CFP Day, or for New York, Women Talk Design, or like Write Speak Code. I think, and then Aisha, I know I met you through a few different channels, like the Women in Tech Slack channel, right?
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of these small, I don't want to say smaller communities, but like it may be not connected to a conference, but these communities are the spaces where like there might be a CFP channel that you can see other people posting links about CFPs, and then you might discover like, oh, there's a thing called Sessionize, or like there's a thing called Tech Daily CFP. So I think for me, it was those spaces that helped me understand like where to even look for things. Because I know the first time I Googled CFP, this is not what I found. It was like some accounting related thing. And I was like, I think I'm doing this wrong. And I think once you have that first talk, I really liked what Laurie said about connecting with the organizers at that conference, and then kind of going further and seeing what they would recommend, or what other conferences are they really a fan of. Because I think it depends on your own criteria. I think for me, a criteria was like the code of conduct at events. So I didn't want to just apply to any conference and set myself up to be in a situation that I don't feel safe. So it was like, okay, like, if I really like this community of women tech design or women in tech, what are the conferences that they feel okay to promote and share and talk about? And that became a really natural filtering process. So that's how I learned a little bit more about like how to find CFP, especially because the word CFP won't really find all the things.
Another tool to check out is CFP Land, done by a fellow speaker in our industry. There's some really great filters there where you can be like, location, will they cover travel if you need to, that sort of thing. So it lets you be a little more specific about some of those criteria.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And once
the
you
other
figure out that, please go ahead, Ben.
no, go.
Once you figure out that criteria, sticking to it and being specific with yourself, and not giving in, I guess, to the temptation to be under the bright lights with Beyonce.
Okay, just call me out next time I use it. Rude.
I think that I've seen some folks start to come up with speaker writers, which outline what they will and won't agree to, and is a way to kind of publicly say, these are my standards. This is what I expect in an event. And if you want me to speak, then I'm going to ask that you comply with this. It's also been an important tool for me. Like I have a list of conferences that I will no longer associate myself with, because, like you said, Ariba, there are folks who will look at that and look at my participation in those events and say, "Oh, this must be a safe environment for me to be in," and I won't participate in events where I know that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's such a good point, especially because when you look up conferences, or if you even find them on Twitter, you can't really tell that from first glance. So if there is someone that you know that have spoken there, or like you can notice that there's an association, reach out to them. I think with Aisha, your example is, I've never even thought about that, like having a list of like conferences or events I'm no longer going to be associated with, and maybe finding a way to make that publicly accessible. Because you're right, the association may be apparent on the internet, but that doesn't mean that you vouch for them, right?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Ben, please. What were you going to say?
Good. What I wanted to say was that, so to expand on a bit on what Henri and Laurie was saying, I think one of the things that, for those who don't know, like one of my first speaking opportunities was creating my own meetup, because I had a hard time sort of figuring out how the CFP process worked. So I went ahead and did that and gave my first like sort of Vue.js 101 talk. And we had that recorded, and that was what I submitted with a lot of my CFPs, actually as a way of saying like, hey, I've spoken before. And the reason I say this is because we live in a time that's unprecedented, where everyone now is basically remote speaking, right? Which means in the past, the only way to speak was to hopefully get accepted in the CFP at a conference where you had an audience. But now you can actually just set up your own Twitch stream and then just like give your own talk, your YouTube channel. And then believe it or not, like you may be like, oh, well, no one's going to watch that. You believe it or not, people will watch, you get some. And then more importantly, you'll send that along to the organizer and say, look, I have experience. And this is important because conference organizers, like they have a sort of like event they have to uphold in terms of like people willing to spend time and often money to come to the event. So if you can show that like, hey, I'm serious about this, I've committed to this, this helps to increase that degree of confidence and can be oftentimes the deciding factor between you and someone else who might have a similar topic but has no, call it, speaking resume for organizers to check a look at.
That's really important. I think a lot of the organizers I've spoken to in the past, one of the things that they say about sort of first-time speakers is, we really liked your proposal, but you're unproven, and that's not meant to be a negative, but we don't want to put someone on stage for a 1 hour long talk who isn't prepared and isn't going to do a good job for the audience. And it's funny that that happens so often now when, like Ben said, there's so many opportunities to sort of make recordings, even yourself, and just be like, hey, this is me giving a talk. And they'll be like, great, awesome, cool. Because the first like 3 or 4 conferences I spoke at, I got to speak at because the very first event I went to happened to be doing a recording. Just happened to. It was a local event. That's not a super common thing. But once there was a video, they were like, oh, okay, that works. And so that first video is so critical for so many people. If you can make it yourself, do it.
Yeah, and that's something that you can ask to do at conferences or if other events that aren't recording. Now, right now, everybody's recording, but
For the most part, yeah.
For the most
Yep.
part,
Yeah.
I have had a couple meetups where it wasn't recorded. That's true. But yeah, even
Everything
when
pre-recorded.
that's also a thing. In fact, you'll see an example of that later today. The next question I have is actually the same question that Sarah in the chat just asked. So once you found those events, how then do you choose between? How do you choose which events that you'll apply to?
Am I going to start again?
All right, I'll start. All right, I'll change
Okay.
it up. For me, I think when I first started out, my basic criteria was that like if it was a topic and an event I was excited to be at, that was enough. Because the thing about CFPs is that regardless of how good your event is or like your proposal is, like I think one time I applied for, I think it was ViewConf US, and I submitted an animation talk, but Sarah Drasner was also speaking at that time. I was not going to get selected for my animation, but I didn't know that. But like, you know, this kind of stuff happens. So it's not necessarily like, sometimes it's just a little bit of game of chance too. So I think you can always apply first, and if things don't work out like scheduling wise, you can always, you know, respectfully decline and, you know, hopefully for another time. But yeah, I would usually just go for it if I'm interested.
Yeah.
Ben doesn't know this, but it's funny. Once I was new to Vue and I was submitting a talk on Vue Router, and Ben Hong was submitting a Vue talk, and he got selected instead of me, which I didn't know at the time that I submitted. But yeah, no, if you find a place that you want to apply to, apply. It does not commit you to speaking, even if you get accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So apply to as many of them as possible. And once you have the abstract, once you have a bio, once you have a link to a headshot, that's all the information you need each time. Sometimes they'll vary a little bit in the type of write-ups. Some of them want sort of a second section that's an outline of what your talk is going to be, that sort of thing. But once you have those artifacts, submit them to any place you think they'll be a fit or any place you would be interested in speaking. And if you get accepted, then you get to make a decision.
That's totally correct. You know, the one thing I'd love to add is that, you know, there is a bit of an inexact science as well, because you might look at the talk and, I mean, the conference and say, okay, there's a good chance that no one's going to talk about this because, you know, it just might be on like the periphery of the topic. And you might come in and have the only talk around this, and they might be like, you know what, this could be a great addition because X, Y, and Z. And so I kind of consider that sometimes. Obviously, I'll consider, you know, the actual conference. It's just if it's one that I've been watching for a while, and I'm like, oh man, you know, should I apply? Should I not? For the most part, I do. You know, and I'm like, whatever, YOLO. And but you also sort of, you know, they might list you a number of topics that they're looking for. And again, it's whether or not you feel there might be room for, you know, your angle, you know, this, which is why I'm a big fan of like a little bit of research, you know, looking at the past conferences, see who's spoken there, what they've spoken about. You know, maybe your topic hasn't been covered in like 2 years, you know, so you might come in and say, hey, you know what? This hasn't been covered. Let me just throw it in. And if you get accepted, you could even mention that while you're on stage. You're like, yeah, you know what? This hasn't been covered a couple of years. And this is what happened in the last 2 years. And I'm here to sort of brush you up on that. So it's like, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. So you have found conferences you want to apply to. You have decided, okay, these are the ones I'm actually going to apply to. How then do you keep track of those different proposals. Because if we're saying, apply to the thing that you want to apply to, like that's potentially a whole lot of stuff.
God, is this everyone's least favorite part of CFPs? Because definitely mine. And like, you can do the Trello board approach, you can do the like Excel spreadsheet, you can do email folders, whatever. But let me tell you, what's going to happen is that you're going to end up realizing that someone has accepted you, that you were really excited about, and you're going to go to send an email right back and say, yes, I'm so excited. This is a true story that happened 2 months ago. Yes, I'm so excited to do this. Thank you so much for inviting me. And then you're going to think about it for 5 minutes, say, those dates sound familiar.
Yeah.
And you're going to find an event that has been rescheduled 3 times because of COVID that is now on those same exact dates, and respond and say, I'm sorry to have given you 2 hours of thinking that I was saying yes to this. I can't do it. And it's going to happen at least once, and just accept it because dates are impossible to keep track of. Yay, date time. It's evil in programming. It's evil in conference talks too.
Yeah. I know Ben's got a good solution here because I think he told me what he did.
Ooh, tell us, Ben.
Yeah.
Wait, which solution are you talking about?
I'm sure we were talking about this. I think you had something where you're like, oh, I put it here and da. I was like, yo, that's actually pretty good.
So I think at one point I was using Notion to do a bunch of relational database stuff where it would track like CFPs and then like relate them to different events. And then have those track different stuff. No, don't get me wrong. The infrastructure fell apart because once you apply to so many, it becomes a lot of manual work to track all of that. So I'm still working on a better solution. But, if you're not applying for a ton, it's manageable, like a spreadsheet.
Yeah, don't listen to us. We're bad examples. That's sort of the...
Yeah.
I think like what I'm hearing and what I really relate with is the fact that you may end up trying different things depending on what phase of applications you're in. Like when I first started, I didn't have a lot to track. I was just like, oh, conferences, this is nice. And I just did a spreadsheet. And I had a folder in my email that was like CFPs. Now, I would need much more organization than that because I feel like one dumping ground of all CFP related emails is not the way to go. So I think like just be flexible with like what systems work for you, and obviously none of our systems will work for you.
Nope.
I see that in the chat, Kurt has said that he does a Trello board. I also do a Trello board. It's like it does take some commitment for sure.
I did it for a while and then I stopped doing it, and that's when things fell apart.
Mm-hmm. The slippery slope.
Yeah. I mean, for a while, I was just doing a calendar where I would put in that I applied for a particular date, and if I got accepted, I'd go in and change it to a different color, and sort of leave it at that. But it can get a little crazy. I don't know if you have time, but I had this crazy situation where I essentially, I was in Germany and I had to be in Atlanta like 2 days later. And I'm like, yeah, that's no sweat. Except that there was a storm in Germany and I had to stay an extra day. And it was bananas. Like I literally got off one plane in my airport, just ran to the other terminal, and I begged these ladies to let me through because I basically had a half hour to go, And honestly, shout outs to those ladies at United. They worked magic. It was like 3 of them. One was on the phone, setting me up. The other one was on the computer, setting me up. And the other one was doing I don't know what. And they got me through it. I told them I'd give them a shout out on Twitter. So
that is the worst part about going by dates only. If you're like, oh yeah, this goes from the 2nd to the 4th, and then this one goes from the 5th to the 7th, that'll be fine. And you're the last talk on the 4th and the first talk on the 5th, and it's across the country, that's not going to work out super well. Ask us how we know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I went light on details. I just don't want to waste too much time, but it was absolutely nuts.
We're being terrible about people who are like doing CFPs for the first time. This is your second year and third year problems, not your first year problems.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, that's it. All right, but basically, don't bunch them in together is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Spread them out. Give yourself some time. And the nice thing about that is that when you do give yourself some time in between talks, you have time to refine the talks that you give and come back with additional material, or maybe you've refined the way that you deliver a point. And that brings me actually to another question, which is related to something that Nitya just put in the chat a little earlier. Is one, how often do you recycle talks? What are your thoughts on recycling talks? But also, now that we are basically only doing online events, we have the choice to deliver pre-recorded talks. Do you have a preference, and which way do you lean?
I'm going to start here again because I have opinions about this.
Okay.
Same.
I'm a big believer of the recycled talk, and I don't like to call it a recycled talk, and here's why. So I came from music, and I try to tell people all the time, would you want to go to see your favorite band do a brand new song every time? You don't know the song, they don't know it that well. It's a lot of, oh, dude, you're off. No. So, and again, I take this from music in a sense that your favorite band goes on tour. There's a good chance that the early dates will be like, oh, they're all right. It was fun. The best dates will be midway through and at the end. They've been on tour for like 3 months, 30 shows. And believe me, by the end, they have it like all dialed in. So I think of the best talks are the ones that have been done a few times. You've worked out the kinks. And as well, quite often, especially in the web, there are changes that happen over like a 6-month period easily. So you can keep adding on to it. And really, by the end, it becomes like such a great talk. Like the details are nailed, your delivery is nailed. In fact, you're starting to give the talk without like your slides. It becomes so smooth. It's a really delightful experience, I think, for the attendees. So I'm a big fan of doing the talk over and over and over again so that you have it nailed.
So the first 3 talks I gave were all brand new talks just for those events. And at the third conference I was at, I was finally talking to other speakers and they said, what are you thinking? That is a lot of work to put into something that you're only going to give once. Like days of work for 30 minutes. One of the talks was 15 minutes. And I learned from that experience and I said, okay, you're not repeating a talk, you're practicing a talk. And you practice a talk before you give it for the first time. But once you give it, it gets better and better and better because you see the audience interaction, you see what people enjoy. And you're like, oh, this is a point that I could focus on more, or this is an area that I could be a little clearer on. There was a talk that I was giving in 2019 into 2020 that I think I gave 7 times. And by the end, I could do it literally in my sleep. And it was a live coding talk. And that's not an easy thing to do. But I knew it so well that it was really effective. I think in terms of the other question that you asked, which is about pre-recording, is I would never reuse the same pre-recording. That to me feels like it's hurting the attendees, and that's not really fair. That's not you preparing for that specific event. Even if it's a practiced talk, there should be a new delivery each time you give it. Whether that's pre-recorded or not doesn't matter. But I'm a big fan of pre-recording, especially because you can't always trust an internet connection if you're doing something with live coding or any kind of like processes running in the background. Knowing that you can edit stuff out if all of a sudden your internet is really laggy is super useful. And it cuts down a little bit on the stress if you know that you have a really busy day the day before the event and you'd like to prepare for it a week ahead of time or, a month ahead of time, which y'all in like 10 minutes. Yeah, so that's my answer on that one.
I mean, something that...
Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, go ahead.
Ariba, how about you?
I was just going to say, I really liked, Henri, your analogy, and it made me think about like, if you have a talk, you know what your learning points are, and you also know what your anecdotes are, and you also and your anecdotes may or may not be related to the project you're talking about. So I also treat it like every time you're at a new conference, you can remix all of those things. So you can, if you treat your talk like, okay, my talk is really about this topic and these learning takeaways, you can remix which anecdotes you want to bring in. And from the first time you gave that talk, maybe you noticed which anecdote really resonated for people. Like right now, everyone is already commenting about the music-related comment that Henri said, right? So he should hang on to that because that shows that everyone really understood that point from that
Merci.
tie-in. And then, and I think the other thing that helps you with is maybe you gave that talk as a 45-minute talk at one event, but then that same talk got accepted for a 20-minute talk at the next conference. So if you hang on to that talk, then you actually get more experience with like expanding and contracting that talk. And that could be, to borrow Henri's word, like an art of itself. So I really like recycling or repurposing, you know, just knowing that, treat it more like you get to remix the way that you want to. And you're doing that every time, thinking through like, what's the audience for this event? Is there a theme for this conference that I want to reshuffle some of this so that I can still tie it in to that theme? And then the other thing I wanted to say about the pre-recording is I love when conferences do the pre-recording because it completely minimizes the stress. And then I get to actually enjoy the conference and learn from the other speakers versus just being overwhelmed with my own anxiety of like, I bet I'll be the one that everything fails and then I'm not even streaming. So I think pre-recording helps there. One thing I have seen done recently with pre-recording, there's a speaker right now, his name is Mike Montefiore, and he pre-recorded a talk about my family, my ancestors were in shipping, and it's really all about like his journey as an immigrant / like, even though he's an immigrant, his ancestors were actually people who enabled slavery. So he pre-recorded that talk. And then what he's been doing is partnering up with other event organizers, not conferences, but what they'll do is like, suppose there's a facilitator and him, they'll introduce the event, then they'll play the pre-recorded talk, and then they'll have like a 40-minute conversation about it. So that is the one situation where I see it work really well, where it's like the discussion part is the tailoring part that still happens. So yeah, I guess if you're doing that, that can work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ben?
All right. So I love what everyone's been talking about in terms of like repurposing talks, but I'd like to push back a little bit because I think the dichotomy that I've been wrestling with recently is that with in-person events, I think you often are giving a talk to sort of a newer audience, and it's sort of, I call it okay that it's sort of being brought across tracks. But in a world where all events are remote and actually mostly free now, they call it, for example, I'm familiar with the ViewConf track, right? A talk at View Amsterdam that's then call it redone at ViewConf US. A lot of times the same people are actually listening to these talks, more or less. So I think it like makes it, I think, more difficult in these regards if you're following like a similar audience to do it, unlike before where like people were attending these things in person. So there's a different reason to either re-listen to it or interact with speakers. So I think that has been a bit something I've been sort of wrestling with. But the other thing about pre-recorded talks, I would say, which I will get into more in my talk later, is I think I would be cautious of it for first-time speakers because recording is a very dangerous void of like, oh, I can record that. And then a talk that you would have delivered in 30 minutes with X amount of prep now becomes you just in your own head, just like trying to talk to a camera for the first time and then splicing God knows how many video clips together in hopes of getting the perfect thing. But again, I think it is a good step forward, but I hope to see more events provide more support for pre-recorded talks. So whether it's like organizers coming on Zoom with you, and then you just give the talk to the organizers, and then they record it, they take care of it. Be very careful when they ask you to do all the editing and stuff. Like it's a very deep black hole that could be very, very traumatic.
See, I didn't even know that could happen. For me, every time I did pre-recorded, it was the organizers and someone else doing it with me. So I had no idea.
That's common.
Yeah.
I've known people where events were charging money and then they asked them to record the talks and the speakers got so stressed out because the talk they would have given normally, they spent 4 to 5 hours recording, editing, and trying to splice it together. and they just were like so burnt out from it. And so I hope to see a bit of a culture shift with online events and when asking for pre-recorded talks.
Wow.
Sorry, go ahead, Henri.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I actually didn't touch on the pre-recording because I think it's another long sort of answer, but I absolutely agree with what Ben said there, simply because, it's great for the actual conference because you won't run into the new challenges of bandwidth and everything there. But pre-recordings are not easy. And there are a lot of little traps that you fall into. I'll give you a quick example. I consider myself a fairly comfortable speaker. My first pre-recording, I did it at night. So I found myself whispering and I didn't know why. And I was like, what the hell? But in my head, it's nighttime, right? And then I remember starting my pre-recording like all jazzed up. And by the end, I was just kind of like this. And I hope everyone had a good time. Thank you very much. And tune in next time on WKRP. You know what I mean? Like it just totally threw me off. And afterwards I was like, wow, what a lesson. And I consider myself relatively experienced, so I would hate to see someone new to the ecosystem just jump into a pre-recording, because then, like Ben said, the editing, holy smokes, the little bit of editing I had to do was already rough, and then I had to ship that over to someone who did a bit more editing. So it's definitely a task I would not take on.
I think the challenge of pre-recording is that whether you intend to or not, your criteria for success looks different, because you can go back and make changes. And if you flub something, you can stop the recording and start over. And so if you're the kind of person who can just press the record button and give your talk as you normally would and ship it off and say that's good enough, then it might be a really good option for you. But if you're a perfectionist and you know that if you have the opportunity to make it perfect, you will, maybe fight against that impulse and try and do it live instead.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Solid.
Just a few minutes left. And I think I want to ask how you go about constructing abstracts for new talks, which relates back to a question we got in the chat a little earlier as well. And if you have one big tip, and then Laurie, I'll have you maybe address Jessica's question though real quick. How do you maintain energy in a pre-recorded talk?
It's really hard. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I am the most energetic person you'll ever meet. And everyone who knows me can verify that. It's really, really hard. I stand, for one. I raise my desk. I am lucky enough to have a standing desk. I stand and I try and do that, not moving too much, but that presence of being in presentation mode energy. And I look directly at the camera and I try and be vivacious. And when it's done, I need a nap, and I'm not exaggerating. It is hard, and I won't deny that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So real quick, how do you approach abstracts, and what's your biggest tip?
I have one quick tip, which is in order to insert energy into my abstract, I start with a question. So it's either the question I'm going to answer or the challenge that I'm doing. It's not every abstract I've ever written, but it's one of those things that it's like, have you ever done X and found it to be a pain in the butt? Well, in this talk, we're going to talk about blah, 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 blah. And I think it was like a how to write papers for school thing that I learned in elementary school. And it works and it sticks, and people can steal it if they want.
Anyone else?
I'll share. If you're in a place that you have no idea what to even talk about, just open up a Google Doc or just open up a plain piece of paper and just start writing ideas. I think I know this day is in service to you for you to get started, because we want to hear your stories be told. So I know that there's a fine line between preparation versus overthinking. I am the chronic overthinker. So I attended CFP Day 1 year and I didn't apply for another year and a half. So I will say, do what you can that gets you to submit the thing. And if that means you just start a doc of a bunch of different ideas and then take a few that really energizes you and you convert those into structures, borrow what Laurie just said, start a question, and then just submit the thing. Just want you to submit the thing. That's it. Like, I know this day is packed with tons of advice. We just want to see you apply.
The one thing I'd love to say is daydream. Just go out and daydream. And I end up daydreaming by listening to podcasts, reading some blogs or whatnot. And it might be like a sentence that I read or heard and it'll get me thinking of like, hey, you know what? This would be an interesting talk potentially, maybe just a lightning talk. But the one thing I'd want to say specifically is don't wait for a CFP to write an abstract. I would spend sometimes like Friday nights, Saturdays, whatever, just having an idea and constructing an abstract right there. And I'll keep it in a draft and I'll hit it up again a little later. And next, you know, I have all these talks that I've never given yet, but they're ready to go, you know, with a couple extra little tweaks instead of like, oh, how am I going to get this? Okay, how's this? Okay, maybe I'm going to say this now. No, I have them all ready to go. And then boom, you know, they might be experimental, but you know, we all play with canary as well. So let's go.
I love it. Thank you all so much. We are at time.